Hello and welcome to this lecture where we're going to be looking at a brief overview of the interface in FL Studio. So we're going to quickly have a look at the channel rack, the playlist, the mixer, piano roll and browser. As FL Studio is slightly different to other digital audio workstations, I'm just going to briefly show you the layout of this software. So this may look a little bit confusing at the moment, but hopefully after this lecture, you'll start to understand how FL Studio works. It is a little bit different to other digital audio workstations, but also has a few similarities. One thing to note is you will always have a hint panel in the top left of FL Studio. So if you ever get confused, you can always look over here and it will tell you some basic information about this. For example, here we have the master volume and master pitch, and it tells us this in the hint panel just here. So this can be useful if you ever get lost and confused and you can't quite remember what something does. One other thing to note, which is really awesome, is if you press F1, or if you're using a Mac, function F1, as long as you're connected to the internet, this will bring up the FL Studio reference manual. But not just that, it will automatically go to the chapter of the area that you have selected in FL Studio. So for example, right now we have the channel rack and step sequencer selected. But as you can see, it opens up on this page and it shows us loads of information about this. I'm just going to close this now. And now I'm going to go over the 5 main sections in FL Studio. First is this channel rack here. And this is where samples and instruments that you're using for your project are stored. And this is also a sequencer and is where we start to write some of our music. We'll look at this in a lot more detail later on, but just so you know, this first box here is the channel rack. This is one of FL Studio's unique features that make it different to other digital audio workstations. So if you've been using Logic Pro or Ableton Live, for example, you may not have something like this, as it is unique to FL Studio at the moment. And also we can open and close the channel rack with this button over here. So if you don't see your channel rack, just click on this icon and it will appear. The next section here is the playlist window. You may also know this as the arrangement window. So this is really where you arrange your song. And we can select this window by clicking on it or pressing Shift and Tab. And just to show you again, because we have this new area selected, we can open up the FL Studio reference manual, and you can open this up by pressing function F1 on a Mac or F1 on Windows. And you can see here in the reference manual, the playlist chapter is open. And we can also open up the playlist window by pressing this button here. The most common way to create music in FL Studio is to actually create patterns in the channel rack, and then arrange these different patterns in the playlist window. Okay, and another important window, which we don't actually have open at the moment, is the piano roll window. So if we click on this button here, we can open and close the piano roll window. This again is a very important area, as you use the piano roll to actually write and sequence MIDI information. We'll go into the piano roll and the other sections in a lot more detail later on, but I just want to quickly show you the main sections in FL Studio before we dive deep into this course. Okay, and going over to the left, we have the browser section. So this is actually a file section that allows you to find different plugins, samples, and instruments on your computer to use in FL Studio. And the next section I'm going to briefly talk about is the mixer. So this is where we can send our audio into individual channels and also add audio effects to these channels. So some of these effects may include EQ, compression, delay, reverb, and many others. Okay, so as you've already seen up here, these icons in the toolbar are shortcuts to actually open and close the main different windows. So this one here will actually open and close the mixer, and the one to the right will open and close the browser. Okay, so another important area that we're going to quickly look at is the transport area. And this is how you can control playback for your song. As you can see here, we have the pattern and song modes. So if you have pattern selected, this will actually play back a pattern that you have selected in your channel rack. For example there, it played back the drums that we had selected in our channel rack. However, if we want to play the song back that's in our playlist window, we will have to change this to song mode. And now if we press play with the play button, it will play back our song. And we can press stop or pause by pressing play again. So we can either play or stop by using these buttons up here. There's also a record button next to this, but we're going to look at recording later on in this course. As you can see, there are many other features and icons in this toolbar at the top, We're going over each of these windows in a lot more detail in this course, but this lecture really is to just go over briefly the main interface. Let's go over this once more. We have the channel rack where we create our patterns. Then we have the playlist window where we arrange these patterns. And then we have the mixer where we can mix and add effects to our tracks. Then we have the piano roll where we can type in and sequence MIDI. And then over on the left, we have the browser where we can access relevant files for FL Studio. So like I said, this is just a really brief overview of this interface. We will go into a lot more detail later on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture.